Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. We're going to revisit our passage, Tanaika, and just continue what we were doing last time. If you recall, we are just going through the text and we're finding details about the text, and then we're actually citing evidence from the text to back up those details. So, what that means, again, textual evidence, what is that? So when we cite text evidence, we are proving the details in the quotes and the answers to our questions directly from the story. So let's go back to our story. And we'll just continue reading, and then I will submit this to you all afterwards, and you can answer those questions and turn those in. So I'll start at this paragraph here. What happened if you couldn't make it? Roger asked. He was born only 3 days after I was, and we were being trained for the Tanaika together. I was happy to know he was frightened too. Many didn't return, Grandfather said, only the strongest and shrewdest. Mothers were not allowed to weep over those who didn't return. If a call couldn't survive, he or she wasn't worth weeping over. It was our way. What a lot of hooey, Roger whispered. I'd give anything to get out of it. I don't see how we have any choice, I replied. Roger gave my arm a little squeeze. Well, it's only 5 days. 5 days? Maybe it was better than being painted white and sent out naked for 18 days, but not much better. We were to be sent, barefoot and in bathing suits, into the woods. Even our very traditional parents put their foot down when Grandfather suggested we go naked. For 5 days, we'd have to live off the land, keeping warm as best we could, getting food where we could. It was May, but on the northernmost reaches of the Missouri River, the days were still chilly and the nights were fiercely cold. Grandfather was in charge of the month's training for Tanaika. One day he caught a grasshopper and demonstrated how to pull its legs and wings off in one flick of the fingers and how to swallow it. I felt sick and Roger turned green. It's a darn good thing it's 1947, I told Roger teasingly. You'd make a terrible warrior. Roger just grimaced. I knew one thing. This particular call Indian girl wasn't going to swallow a grasshopper no matter how hungry she got. And then I had an idea. Why hadn't I thought of it before? It would have saved nights of bad dreams about squishy grasshoppers. I headed straight for my teacher's house. Mrs. Richardson, I said, would you lend me $5? $5, she exclaimed. What for? You remember the ceremony I talked about? Tanaika, of course. Your parents have written me and asked me to excuse you from school so you can participate in it. Well, I need some things for the ceremony, I replied in a half-truth. I don't want to ask my parents for the money. It's not a crime to borrow money, Mary, but how can you pay it back? I'll babysit for you 10 times. That's more than fair, she said, going to her purse and handing me a crisp, new $5 bill. I'd never had that much money at once. I'm happy to know the money is going to be put to a good use, Mrs. Richardson said. A few days later, the ritual began with a long speech from my grandfather about how we had reached the age of decision, how we now had to fend for ourselves and prove that we could survive the most horrendous of ordeals. All the friends and relatives who had gathered at our house for dinner made jokes about their own Tanaika experiences. They all advised us to fill up now, since for the next 5 days we'd be gorging ourselves on crickets. Neither Roger nor I was very hungry. I'll probably laugh at this when I'm an accountant, Roger said, trembling. Are you trembling? I asked. What do you think? I'm happy to know boys tremble too, I said. At 6 the next morning, we kissed our parents and went off to the woods. Which side do you want? Roger asked. According to the rules, Roger and I would stake out territories in separate areas of the woods, and we weren't to communicate during the entire ordeal. I'll go toward the river if it's okay with you, I said. Sure, Roger answered. What difference does it make? To me, it made a lot of difference. There was a marina a few miles up the river, and there were boats moored there. At least I hope so. I figured that a boat was a better place to sleep than under a pile of leaves. Why do you keep holding your head? Roger asked. Oh, nothing, just nervous, I told him. Actually, I was afraid I'd lose the $5 bill, which I had tucked into my hair with a bobby pin. As we came to a fork in the trail, Roger shook my hand. Good luck, Mary. Incognita, I said. It was the call word for courage. The sun was shining and it was warm, but my bare feet began to hurt immediately. I spied one of the berry bushes Grandfather had told us about. You're lucky, he had said. The berries are ripe in the spring, and they are delicious and nourishing. They were orange and fat, and I popped one into my mouth. Ah! I spat it out. It was awful and bitter, and even grasshoppers were probably better tasting, although I never intended to find out. I sat down to rest my feet. A rabbit hopped out from under the berry bush. He nuzzled the berry I'd spat out and ate it. He picked another one and ate that too. He liked them. He looked at me, twitching his nose. I watched a red-headed woodpecker bore into an elm tree, and I caught a glimpse of a civet cat waddling through some twigs. All of a sudden, I realized I was no longer frightened. Tanayika might be more fun than I'd anticipated. I got up and headed toward the marina. Not one boat, I said to myself dejectedly, but the restaurant on the shore, Ernie's Riverside, was open. I walked in, feeling silly in my bathing suit. The man at the counter was big and tough looking. He wore a sweatshirt with the words Fort Sheridan, 1944, and he had only 3 fingers on one of his hands. He asked me what I wanted. A hamburger and a milkshake, I said, holding the $5 bill in my hand so he'd know I had money. Okay. After reading that, we'll just go back through and answer these questions. Okay, the first question is, what are some of the Tanayika rituals planned for Mary and Roger? So what do we need to do? We need to go through and re-listen or reread the text and figure out where it tells us what some of the rituals were. On the next page, we have the question, why do you think Mary asked her teacher for $5? Now, there may not be specific information that says Mary asked her teacher for $5 because on this one. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make an inference. What does that mean? Well, that means we're going to read the text and what it tells us about how she got the $5, when she asked about the $5. And you have to think about, why would she want the $5? And then you can go through the text and get different clues about why you think she would want the $5. So that one may be a little tricky at first, but just do the best you can. On this page, we're going to circle the details that help you picture what Mary sees, tastes, and feels. And we'll begin reading this paragraph here. Okay, where it says the sun was shining. That's where you'll start there. And then lastly, we're going to describe the man Mary sees at the counter. So you should be able to look in this paragraph here, and it'll describe exactly how she saw the man at the counter and what he looked like. So that'll be your assignment, and I'll post that on Google Classroom here shortly, and you can get started. And I won't make that due until this weekend, so you'll have some time to work on that. And then next week, we'll begin the last section of Tanayika, and we'll go from there. So I hope you have a good day and the rest of your week, and we'll see you later.